Okay, welcome everyone. I am Professor Margaret Ormiston, and I am on the faculty in the management department. And we are here to welcome you. We have a number of faculty here who are with us this evening. Dr. Herman Guinness, Savatos, and Joel Gemin, and Sharon Hill, and Jorge Walter. Thank you all for being here to join me to welcome everyone to this evening to our open house on better understanding the PhD program in management and strategic management and public policy at George Washington. So we will be recording this evening. Hopefully that is okay with you, but just in order to be able to share this with others who are unable to attend this evening. So really what we want to do this evening is quite simple. We want to kind of talk about why enrolling in a PhD program. It's wonderful to see you here and to see that you're interested in a PhD, but just to kind of think through why, what's so good about a PhD. And then to dive in a little more specifically about why getting a PhD in management and strategic management and public policy, what's particularly special about these areas of study, to dig in a little bit to the doctoral program process so you understand what the actual structure of the program is, and then dive into thinking about the process for applying, and so that you better understand the time frame and what's expected of you. And then finally, we're going to spend some time, of course, on your questions, because we want to make sure that you feel that you are really clear on everything that's expected of you in the application process, but also in getting your PhD and having a career in management and strategic management. So on that note, please feel free. I already see an active chat, and I always love a classroom with an active chat. So please put your questions in the chat, put comments in the chat, and also you're welcome to jump on audio, but please just make sure we are here for you this evening. So we want to make sure we get your questions answered. So jump into the chat with any questions that you have at any time, and we will make sure there is plenty of time at the end to go through any additional questions that you have. Okay. So first off, then I just want to kind of again welcome the faculty that are here, and just say that I'm really grateful to be at George Washington and be in the management department, and to be connected with the strategic management and public policy department here at George Washington. We have really wonderful faculty who are doing some fantastic research that we're going to take a look at in a little bit. But I just want to kind of say just how lucky I feel to be here, and certainly it's a wonderful place to get a PhD because you are able to learn from people who are absolute experts in the field. So first, why enroll in a PhD program? So if you're like me, so when I was an undergraduate, I was an undergraduate at University of California, Los Angeles, and I had the opportunity to do an honors program there where we got to do an honors thesis. And I absolutely, it was on bilingual education in Los Angeles school district. And this was a wonderful opportunity to do this deep dive into it, this topic of interest and passion for me. And so that was when I first became excited about the idea of getting a PhD. And it really is a PhD program, and getting the opportunity to get a doctorate is this opportunity to do a deep dive like that honors thesis was for me on an area of interest, to learn hands-on from the absolute experts how to actually conduct the research and good science. Back when I did that thesis, I have to say that probably I wasn't conducting the research as well as I could have, but certainly when you're getting your PhD, that the guidance, and one of the things I think is incredible about the PhD program at George Washington is that it's very hands-on focus in terms of learning how to conduct research. And you have an opportunity to shape discourse on a topic. So there are such important research areas that the faculty at George Washington are examining, and to actually have an opportunity to shape that discussion of what's going on, to shape the future research, is an incredible experience to be able to have. And then, of course, ultimately, you're learning how to teach the next generation. And it's an exciting and daunting task, but it's one that at George Washington we really take seriously, is that not only do we want to create top research scholars who conduct methodologically sound and robust research, but are also capable teachers who are able to present and bring the applications of the research into the classroom to share with their students. And I think another reason why enrolling in a PhD program is an incredible opportunity to so many of us is because of the autonomy that it creates over your career, is that you really are your own boss. You're really the person who's driving to where you want to go, to your destination. And that's incredible these days to have that opportunity. And so a PhD is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. I really do feel like it's a luxury to be able to get a PhD and to have the opportunity to be an academic and to be a professor. Now, I think there are some sort of myths that exist about getting a PhD, and so it's worth just kind of going over those. One thing is that thinking about the idea of going to school for 5 years after you've gotten your undergraduate degree or a master's degree, it seems like, how can I possibly afford to do that? It seems too expensive. But in fact, a good PhD program like George Washington, you don't have to pay a thing. There's no tuition fees for getting your PhD. GW takes care of it for you. It is part of what we're doing, is to produce the next generation of scholars. And so it is kind of our duty and obligation to provide that. So it's not actually expensive. And so another myth is that maybe you'd walk away with tons of debt. But you don't, because George Washington provides stipends to support the students and to be able to live on that stipend while they're focusing on their studies. Another myth is that you need a master's degree in order to get a PhD, but you don't. You do not need an MBA, you do not need a master's in science, you don't. We teach you along the way all the skills that you need in order to get your PhD. And then sometimes you might think, well, getting a PhD is not worth it financially. I won't be able to get a job afterwards. The salaries will be too low. But actually, the academic salaries are very attractive. And particularly when you are housed within a business school and are going for jobs in that area and getting your PhD in the business school, they're pretty good. So they're, in terms of the potential concerns that people often have about the financial concerns that people have about getting a PhD, they're actually just myth. The facts are that it's actually can be definitely a good, secure path for your future. So a couple of other things. This one is I find quite relieving, is, and I recall the professor who told me this, is that you have to be brilliant to succeed in a PhD. But in fact, that's actually a myth. What you really need is grit, determination, willingness to persevere. It's not about brilliance. Before I got my PhD, I was a research assistant at the University of Southern California for a wonderful professor named Edward Lawler. And I remember when I talked to him about my decision to get my PhD, he said, the most important thing that any student needs to know is that it's not about how smart you are. It's about endurance. It's about willingness to keep going. Because at times the autonomy that you get from getting your PhD makes you have to be independent. You have to keep going. You have to work hard. But you get taught the skills that you need. And so I found that actually a couple times when I found the program to be quite difficult, I always came back and reminded myself, okay, keep going. So getting a PhD is like 5 more years of undergraduate? No, not at all. You are the absolute driver of your education, not your advisor, not your parents, you. And that's a wonderful luxury, again, to have this autonomy, this opportunity to really dive into what interests you. Myth, getting a PhD is easy? No, just based on the fact that really one of the most important characteristics you need is grit and endurance. It's hard work getting a PhD. Most students are working 50 to 60 hours a week and reading a lot of academic articles each week that are dense, that are not easy to read. But it's doable. And again, you are getting a stipend, so you are getting supported to do this work and to focus. So it is completely doable. And it's interesting work that you're doing. So it is absolutely doable, but it wouldn't be described as easy. Okay, so then I guess the next question is to why would you then get your PhD in management and strategic management and public policy? And I think that for me, I'll just say from my personal experience, is that what happened for me is I got my undergraduate degree. And then after I got my undergraduate degree, I went into consulting. And it was a really interesting firm that I worked for. And they worked us very, very hard. And so hard, there was a very high turnover rate. And so they actually had a psychologist who would come every Friday and talk to us about how hard the job was, and basically to try and keep us from turning over. And for me, what I realized is that while the job was very interesting, what I was doing, that I was actually a lot more passionate about and interested in what the psychologist was up to than what I was doing. And that was a real turning point for me, was that, like, why getting a PhD in management or strategic management was important is that we spend so much of our lives at work. People spend so much of their lives at work, are fundamentally shaped by organizations, that understanding the problems that affect employees, organizations, and society was something that I felt very passionate about. And so that was when I went on to get my PhD. And I feel really honored to be able to conduct research that might actually have impact. And certainly I feel really honored to be able to shape future leaders thinking about these important issues, because we are getting to teach undergraduates and master's students and doctoral students on these topics, and they will lead us into the future. And to be a small part in shaping their thinking is again a real honor. And if I haven't said it enough, one of the things about getting a PhD in this area is the autonomy that you have, and that so you can focus on the research questions that really matter to you and that you feel very passionate about. And you can also have autonomy over the topics that you bring into the classroom and what you share with these future leaders. So it's very easy to feel very passionate about what you do, because it's up to you to focus on what interests you. So in terms of thinking about management versus strategic management and public policy, we work very collaboratively as departments. We're two separate departments. And basically we look at organizations from different lenses, whether it's from a more micro lens, which you'll hear a lot in thinking about management and strategic management. You hear about micro lenses, where we're looking more in the management department at kind of the psychology and the social psychology of interactions between individuals, understanding what's going on in the heads of individuals, understanding relationships and teams, understanding things like culture, to strategic management, where we're thinking at more at a strategy level, at more of a firm level, to understand these kind of the impact that firms are having in the wider society. But certainly our research crosses and intersects, and there's a lot of opportunity for collaborative research. And that's why we work together to train our doctoral students. And so students take 2 years of coursework taught by management and strategic management faculty. And so they take it together, which is a really wonderful way to create a cohort of students across management and strategic management. And faculty from both departments mentor and support doctoral students across both departments. And so we help with comprehensive exams, we help with papers, we help with dissertations, and create that kind of collaborative environment. So while we do study different topics and different research questions, we work together in shaping and developing our doctoral students. So, okay, so then what do management and strategic management public policy professors do? So just kind of like what I was saying, when getting your PhD, so we're teaching undergraduates, graduate, and doctoral courses. So while at George Washington, I taught all of those courses and really enjoy the kind of variety and opportunity to get to work with these different types of students who have different interests and questions on their mind, from the very practical to the more theoretical. So we're creating knowledge through theory development and academic field research. And then when we're not in the classroom, we are focusing on conducting that research and publishing research in top academic journals and books. And then we provide service to the university and to the greater community, right? So we work within our departments, but of course, we work collectively to aid the needs of the university and then reach out to the community. And I think to go that extra step in terms of this autonomy is that we have this freedom to shape society. I think the work that's being done with it by my esteemed colleagues certainly has this opportunity and does shape society with the findings of the work that's being done here. So that's kind of the next thing I wanted us to talk about, was what are some of the current questions of our faculty? And there's some really interesting work that's being done here. And so, I mean, questions again that are kind of at the organizational level, questions that are inside the organizations to understand the psychology, thinking about virtual work, thinking about gender bias, thinking about social responsibility. Really important questions. And actually, I would love if we could actually get a couple faculty to talk. And so Jorge Walter, if you wouldn't mind, Professor Walter and Professor Guinness, if you wouldn't mind as well, just each sharing what work you are doing. So maybe we could start with Professor Walter. This is the first question here. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. Yeah, no, again, you see a wide variety of questions popping up on the screen. You also see that they cross what Margaret was referring to, the micro at the individual level, psychology, social psychology, as well as the macro levels, which looks at organizations and even broader trends in society. You see the two departments and the faculty working really cross these boundaries and do research at all levels. So in my particular case, I was for a number of years now interested in how organizations manage people, teams, and entire business units and things like that. And very recently, we've seen a pretty profound changes in the nature of work. We've seen the remote work coming up as a product of the pandemic we're in. Many people don't work in an office anymore, at least not full time. We've seen the rise of the gig economy. People are not working for an organization anymore. They just work on a task. They're paid for that particular task, like an Uber driver or an Instacart deliverer. We also seen pretty big advances in artificial intelligence. We have algorithms now that are better than humans at predicting things. So really, our workplace is no longer a company you work for, a workplace you go to, and you might not even have a boss anymore. Many companies now manage with algorithms. There's no people anymore, no supervisors anymore in charge. So in that environment, my research is interested in what exactly can we recommend to companies, to organizations, how to manage these new forms of work if we no longer are in the settings that most of our understanding has been developed in. So all these changes, where do we go from here is, I think, the question driving my current research.
Thanks, Jorge. I mean, any kind of like findings that you could share at this point, or any kind of observations at this point?
It's a little interesting. So we were hoping for a long time that with all the advances in our understanding about companies, in our technologies, we would actually be more helpful, more pleasant, more concerned about workers. But what we see increasingly, companies like Uber and Amazon, the warehouse workers, for instance, the technology has been used to really almost tighten the screws, right? Create an even more all-encompassing surveillance of these workers and push them even harder, right? As an Uber driver, you're nudged to stay a little longer on a job, to do a little more afterwards, right? And then they compare you to your peers. You can make a little more money. So what we see a lot is that these new developments have actually been used to maybe even exploit workers a lot more than it was possible in the past. And I think it's very interesting to see what we are capable of doing and what we might want to do as a society, right? In the long run, not just a profit, but also in the long run, is this an environment we want to be in? Are we still attractive to recruit new employees? Do people want to work in these environments, right? Those kinds of questions I think are really clashing right now. What we can do and what we should be doing. Does that make sense?
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. That's really, really fascinating. And I think obviously this is exactly kind of the point I was making about, I mean, this is shaping society. These are things that are happening. These are important questions that need to be addressed and understood so that we can make a difference. And then we can share these lessons and these observations in the classroom to shape future leaders. So thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate that. Professor Guinness, would you share with us some of your recent work?
Sure. First, thank you, Margaret, for organizing this session. I think it's wonderful. Thank you so very much. I am Herman Guinness. I'm a professor in the Department of Management. And I'll just like to say that being a professor and a researcher is the best job in the world, hands down. There's nothing that comes even close because you have your freedom to study anything you want. You have the ability to change the world. You have the ability to shape the minds of young students and improve the world in many meaningful ways. One very key aspect of our doctoral program is the overlap and interactions between levels of analysis. Margaret mentioned the individuals, the teams, the firms, the industries as well. And it's very interesting that Jorge is in the strategy department and he talked about organizational behavior. So since I am in the management department, I will talk about strategy and I will talk about what makes some firms more competitive than others. And in today's economy, like Jorge was talking about that thing, it is not that hard to imitate another firm's technology. If they buy a new machine or they have new IT infrastructure, it is not very hard for another firm to quickly get the same technology. Companies that are in the service sector, like a bank, if a bank offers a new product, like a new investment tool or opportunity or an app on your phone for you to check your account balances, it will not be long until another bank does exactly the same thing. So some of our research, and I have to say our research because all of our doctoral students are heavily involved hands-on months before the program begins. The program begins in August, but we get our doctoral students involved in research in April, before August, a few months before, so that you have a paper hopefully ready to submit to the Academy of Management meetings by January. So 6 months into your program, you will be able to hopefully submit a paper for presentation. And another thing we do in our program is we give resources, money, so students can attend the Academy of Management, Strategic Management Society, and other meetings that are critical. So even banks and service companies can also quickly imitate others. But what it's harder to imitate is your people. The creativity, the innovation, the new ideas, the culture, the going the extra mile, all those things that make the Googles and the Apples of this world so much better and successful than others. So our research is about performance, how to recruit employees, how to retain employees. Now we're looking at this great resignation, the big tsunami of people leaving companies that have not treated them very well during COVID. And guess who are the people who leave? Those who can, those who have the skills that are marketable, those who have skills that other companies want. So what's happening right now is companies are losing their top employees, but not to anyone, to the competitors, because they go to the competitors within the same industry. So how can we help companies retain talent, acquire talent, develop talent? But this is not just about firm performance. It is also about employee well-being. It's about creating a good balance between work and no work activities. It's creating healthy work environments. It's creating environments where employees are not harassed, where employees feel good about going to work every day, where you make friends, where you create social relationships. So our research in talent management has to do with firms doing good and doing well at the same time. Related to the topic of corporate social responsibility, we also are studying CSR from a talent management perspective, how employees perceive whether the CSR of their firms is genuine or not, whether CSR is just a marketing plot or something that the companies really, really want to do. So overall, we have a very exciting set of research studies going on. We use quantitative methods, we use qualitative methods, we use databases, we use Monte Carlo simulations, we use interviews with CEOs. So we have a range of methods, a range of theories, and all of our doctoral students are heavily involved in our research from day one. And I love working with people from management as well as people from strategy. So thank you. Who's next?
Thank you, Herman. Would any of our other faculty like to chime in with any work that they're doing right now?
Hi, Margaret. This is Sharon.
Thanks, Sharon. Hi.
Hi there. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. It is so great to see you. And I'm going to keep mine relatively short because we've got lots of exciting questions, hopefully, that we can help to answer for you. I was just going to build on, I think, an extension of what the other two speakers have said. And so my research is broadly focused on virtual work. And so that is, you take interactions between employees where you take away in-person face-to-face interaction, and now the interactions occurring using technology mediated communication and over distances. And I have been working on this for a couple of decades now, but I've got to tell you, I am so very excited about where we are now, because this has been a growing phenomenon at work for many years. But as we all know, COVID-19 has thrust us into this remote work mode. And so it has really, really kind of revitalized interest in this area of research. And so I've always been excited about it, but it's great to see so many others being excited about it as well. One of the things that I've been looking at here most recently is examining how virtual work influences employee well-being. Virtual work, one of the things it does is it takes us out of our traditional office environments and really blurs the boundaries between our work and non-work environment. And it's really important to understand, and for future managers to understand, what they're going to have to do to ensure that this blurring of the boundaries, and as employees work in these environments that are more technology mediated and working across distance with others, how we can ensure that employee well-being continues to thrive. And I think, wow, haven't we seen during COVID-19 the impact that virtual work can have on well-being? And I think this has really increased the focus on the importance of not just, are we getting the job done, but as Herman mentioned, are we getting it done in a way that really promotes the well-being of our employees? And so just a quick snapshot of what I'm finding, very quick, and that is it's very much a double-edged sword. What we know is that virtual work can help employee well-being because it gives more autonomy and flexibility. But at the same time, there are a lot of ways in which it can harm employee well-being, blurring work, non-work boundaries, making it more difficult to communicate, making it more difficult to get social support from leaders and employees. So we're trying to tease all of that out so we can come up with very actionable strategies for organizations and leaders to take to manage work in what's going to be increasingly a virtual environment.
Thank you, Sharon. I mean, again, clearly, these are such important, relevant questions that we're in the classroom managing these questions all the time from students right now, because we need to understand these things. All the research that we've just been presented here these are critical questions. And so it is wonderful to have these as colleagues to be thinking about these important things and then get to bring them into the classroom and share with our students. Joel, would you say maybe a few words about what your important work?
Oh, sure. Thank you so much, Margaret. So nice to see everyone here. Thanks again for organizing this. Yeah, so my work is, I take an organization theoretic approach. So you could think of it as more sociological in its orientation. And I'm interested in understanding the kinds of social problems that organizations take it upon themselves to try to contribute to, and whether or not their efforts make a difference or not, and what kinds of interventions we might want to think about from a policy perspective that maybe would help where businesses don't help or where things get stuck. So one project I'm looking at right now, we're studying a movement in the United States that's resulted in the passage of new legislation in 37 states that allows companies to incorporate as what they call benefit corporations. So instead of being an S corporation or a C corporation, if you're familiar with those types of legal forms, firms could adopt this new legal form called a benefit corporation that requires their executives and board of directors to assure that the firm is delivering more than just financial profits, but also delivering environmental and social benefits. And so we're looking at how the passage of that legislation affects another initiative that many firms have gotten on board which is some kind of ESG, or environmental, social, and governance certification. And we conceive of those as two different sort of field level governance mechanisms. And we're interested in how they play out in the real world. And do they help each other or do they hinder each other? And that, we think contributes to kind of a larger conversation that a lot of people have been excited about lately, sometimes called either reimagining capitalism or remaking capitalism. I think I caught, a quote from Biden even just this past week. If we could just save democracy, then we'll be really on, sort of an important, agenda item. So that's the kind of work that I'm doing. So thank you very much, Margaret.
Thank you for that. And clearly, I mean, we can see, I mean, I'm thinking of some of the research that I have done on social responsibility and relevance there. And it's exciting to think of the interaction and interplay between our two departments. But again, also just really important questions that have a societal impact. Sabat, I think I would love to hear from you, and then I'm gonna move us forward. But Sabat, please share, because your work is really important and shows kind of the diversity also of what we're doing here.
Yeah, thank you very much, Margaret, for organizing this great event. I am really excited to meet all of you. And I can also see that some of the participants interested in relating their studies in tourism, at least two participants directly communicated with me and they join now, I can see. So basically my study focused on community participation in development process. So I studied participatory development theories, and I relate these theories to tourism development, how tourism development, how participatory theories can be applied to tourism development. In fact, I would like to underline that at the management department at GW, we teach the theories of management, strategic management, public policy that can be applicable to any sector, banking, health sector, and the tourism industry as well. So, and around the world, and the many universities and the established standalone a tourism school, they teach tourism, on its own, it may be a good approach. But what I believe, in the absence of the best, the GW approach is the better one, because unless you learn some things at general level, at generic level, and unless you dive into the theories, and you cannot apply that theories to other sector. So studying tourism in the context of tourism management, studying tourism in the context of public policy making process, and studying tourism in the context of strategic management, I think it is excellent. So I like this GW approach, although I did my PhD, at a standalone school in United Kingdom, and basically after underlying this basic issue, my research focus on, I start with the community participation, then sustainable development, and then the destination marketing, and the tourism policy making process. So far, and I would like to share with the participant that although I studied tourism and apply many theories of public policy making, and for example, how centralized or whether centralized or decentralized planning approach is more useful for developing a destination. So I published good articles in top journals, and it generated around 9,000 citation, and that indicates that studying tourism in the context of management, in the context of the strategic the decision-making process and public policy appears to be more useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Suat. Yeah, so I mean, again, just looking at how across different contexts, we can be asking these questions about individuals, about organizations, about societal impact, about public policy, and really they kind of are translating. So as you can see, a lot of different research questions that are being addressed. And I think this again speaks to the autonomy that we have as researchers, as faculty, to chart the path that we're interested in. In the interest of time, I work on gender bias within top management teams, and so I'm incredibly passionate about that. But since you're having to listen to me talk about all this other stuff, I'm not going to go into detail with you now. But of course, you're welcome to email me if you're interested in hearing any more about that. But such interesting things. So thank you all for sharing. With the time that we have left, I want to spend a little time talking to you about the doctoral program process. And then we'll get into some of the nitty-gritty stuff about applying. So in terms of the program, so it's typically a 5-year program, and in the first 2 years, it's going to be focusing on your coursework. And so in that coursework, you are going to be taking classes that are within the discipline that you have focused on. So if it's in management, then you'll be taking some specific classes within management, within strategic management, specific classes in strategic management. But again, because we are a joint program, we're going to be taking a lot of classes together. Then there's a standard research methods course that you will be taking. And I think because of what we study things that are drawing on psychology, drawing on sociology, economics. Really, it's a very cross-disciplinary focus in terms of the coursework. So not only is that in terms of the courses that you'll be taught by faculty from the management and strategic management groups, but you also have the opportunity to take classes within the psychology department, for example, within the industrial organizational psychology department, for example. So there's real opportunity to be cross-disciplinary and to also to focus on classes that are of real interest to you. So one of my doctoral students, for example, is very interested in stereotypes and bias. And so she went and took specific classes within psychology in order to address these types of research questions that she was interested in. So the first 2 years you will take coursework, and then At the end of your time there, at that point, you'll take an exam, and a comprehensive exam. And this is a written comprehensive exam where you get a set of questions that are asked at the end of your second year. And then you will, depending on our department, we have slightly different ways, but you'll take an exam that kind of tests your knowledge of the coursework that you've taken over the last 2 years. It also is an opportunity to start pushing you in the direction of the research questions that you're interested in. So one of the things I like about the exams that we give our doctoral students is that we're really aiming to get them ready to be experts in their specific area of passion. And so the exam even is driven by our students in terms of what their areas of interest are. They also have an exam they also at that point will write a second year paper. And the second year paper is again focused on an area of absolute interest for the individual that they work on with their advisor at that point. And it's actual original research that they are working on, that they're studying, whether it's interest, whether they're conducting it in an experimental lab setting, whether it's survey work, whether it's interviews. The methodology, again, is up to the student and their advisor, depending on their research interests. And so in the research methods courses, in the coursework that students take in their initial 2 years, they're learning about all different types of methodologies that we have seen from our faculty that they're using to conduct work. Now, once the first 2 years are complete, the coursework is done, the second year exam is done, the second year paper is written. At that point, it's time to move into the dissertation. And the dissertation involves a number of steps. It's first developing what the research idea of interest, and kind of as you see from that second box that says dissertation research, from the very beginning of your program at George Washington, and this is kind of what Herman mentioned, is that we think that getting your feet wet with research right away is really important. So you get involved in research really early on to start to think about what you're really focused on and what you're interested in. And that will start to shape the research questions that you might have for when you do your dissertation. So your dissertation first, again, it involves figuring out what your research question of interest is. And then you will work to defend a research proposal, dissertation proposal, which again is about the research question of interest, why it's important, what's the motivation for it, along with how will you study your research questions, what kind of methodology will you use. You defend that proposal, and once you do that with your committee, which involves faculty members within the department as well as some external faculty members, then you move on to the actual testing of your research questions and the further theoretical development, and then the analysis of your results based on the studies that you've run. The final step is the dissertation defense, which is typically done in the 5th year. And we have a number of students going through that right now. And then at that point, it's in that same year, that 5th year, you are on the job market and looking for an academic tenure track position. And that's really kind of the goal of our program, is to get you an academic position where you can conduct research and you can teach students. So is there any other points that any other faculty would like to jump in with here in terms of the program process? Okay.
So, hi, Margaret.
Yeah, hi.
This is Sharon. I'll jump in just briefly, just to mention something that's not highlighted on the slide, but we certainly take also very seriously, and that is to prepare you in your role for teaching. And so we also have a fairly extensive process of preparing students to teach, where they're mentored by a faculty member, then they sit in on a faculty member's class, and then students get the opportunity to also teach a couple of courses on their own, so that they can also build a history of teaching and get some teaching evaluations under their belt, so that when they do go on the market, they also, they have a very good story to tell about their teaching. So we also take that very seriously, and spent quite a bit of time preparing you also for your role in the classroom.
Thank you, Sharon. Appreciate that. That's a really important point to bring up. So that kind of covers at a very basic level what the doctoral program is. It's 5 years. The first 2 years is coursework. The last 3 years are you conducting your original research, and then that final year is going on to the job market. In terms of the final thing I kind of want to go over is just sort of what is involved in applying, what are the skills that are needed, and really the critical skills needed are the quantitative skills. So we will teach you these things, in terms of statistics and research skills, but certainly having some background and experience in these areas is important. And then the qualitative is the ability to write. And again, these are skills that you work on every single day in getting your PhD. And that is something that we really pride ourselves on, is the rigorous coursework and the rigorous training to give you these quantitative and qualitative skills. In terms of actually getting in, the PhD program is a highly selective process. We typically let in 1 to 2 students a year. So a goal for strategic management and management departments would be to bring in 3 to 4 students total across the 2 departments in a year. And so what we're looking for is a number of things. Certainly test scores are important to submit in terms of GRE, GMAT, and TOEFL, but those are just one element. What's really important to us also is the statement of purpose, is why are you passionate and excited about getting your PhD in management or in strategic management? We want to see that enthusiasm. We want to see the research questions, the ideas that really interest you, that you've been thinking about, whether it's because you've been in work and on the job and seeing firsthand research questions that really interest you, or because you've been in a master's program somewhere or in your undergraduate degree and there's questions that you have that you feel you want answered. So that statement of purpose is very important to us. We take that very seriously. It's also important, of course, to have recommendations, whether they're from faculty that you've been able to do research with, or from classes that you've been in, or from other mentors that you've had in your career or life that can speak about your capabilities in terms of these quantitative and qualitative skills. And then research experience. So something that the research, as we talked about in terms of the myths of getting a PhD, is the focus that it takes, the endurance that it takes, the research process. Is having experience with the research process can be really helpful so that you are able to kind of understand the way that that research unfolds. Is it absolutely imperative? Not necessarily, but it is helpful to have that experience. And so we want to hear what the kind of experiences you've had, whether it was an honors thesis that you did in your undergraduate degree, or whether you were able to work with a faculty directly. We want to know what kind of experiences that you've had. So those are the kind of basic requirements for the application and for getting it in. The deadline is January 15th, so it's coming up. And given the various steps that are involved, it is worth getting started soon. And so the application site is listed on these slides, and we will send out these slides so you can gain access to this information. But do make sure that you get started well in advance so that you can make sure you check all the boxes that are required. So at this point, I think really what we would love to do is with the time that's remaining is put it over to you and let you ask some questions. And I do see there's some questions in the chat, and Jorge, I appreciate it because it looks like you are are working on answering those questions. So thank you for that.
Trying, but I think you might want to go through Nuruddin's question. It's a number and I'm not fast enough, but I think it applies more broadly to the program. So that might be helpful for anyone if you want to respond to those.
Yeah, and at this point, I'm really happy for any of the faculty here, and particularly those who maybe have already read the questions, if you want to jump in with answering any of them. Let's see. Where are we? So Herman is answering those questions. Thank you. Yeah, I see a question, a hand up, please. Nuruddin, please.
Yeah, sorry, can I speak now?
Please, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for organizing a program like this. It's really resourceful and insightful. Yeah, first of all, I think I need to commend Professor George Walter. I've actually contacted him, I think sometimes this year, concerning one opening about the PhD program, I think in management or something like that. I don't know if you could actually remember. So he sent a link that's very resourceful for me as well. You know, I went through the link and I was able to understand the scope of the work. Yeah, however, I think I've sent my questions to the chat, but I would like to ask them orally. I don't know if that is allowed.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, my first question is this: is language proficiency a must? Like, is it mainly required? For instance, now I had my bachelor in Nigeria, and mostly in Nigeria, you know, the mode of communication, the mode of instruction in all our tertiary institutions is English language. So even though at that, there is one particular elementary exam that we used to do before we enter the institution, which is called WAHEC for Western Africans. You know, English language is also part of the subject that we take in there. So having passed all those stages, is proficiency language is still a mandatory requirement. Recently, currently, I'm actually doing my master's in Indonesia. You know, as we know, Indonesia, they are not actually considered as an English language speaking country. So for example, now if I'm to apply for this PhD, definitely I'm going to use my master's degree and my bachelor's degree to apply together. So considering those two factors, is still language proficiency still a must required for me to submit for that application? So that's one. And second, concerning the publication, yeah, I think I have a few publications, like 3 or 4, but mostly looking through the research interest of the professors you presented this evening, I could see that majorly my publications are not actually in line with all those research interests. So, you know, seeing the inconsistency in that line, is my previous publication still viable for me to use, you know, as part of my application? Does that? And then concerning the recommendation from at least 2 faculties member, I think I would like to plead to our professors and our faculty members, you know, whenever a student or a potential applicant see a vacant position or a vacant PhD opening, the first thing for them is to just reach out to the perhaps the supervisor or the research lead. Most times, you know, it baffles me when you message some professors or some faculty members and it takes them for like a year before they respond. You know, in that regard, someone will definitely lose hope. So that's why I actually commended Professor George Walter before I start my question, because I don't know if you could remember, you know, sometimes this year, I think 4 or 5 months ago, he actually responded immediately and he gave me the necessary requirement for me to know. You understand? So that actually made me happy. I was so happy with that. So, and then lastly, you know, this program I think is very insightful, very resourceful. I don't know if there's any mentorship platform, you know, for this particular program. So thank you. Those are my questions, and I would like you to answer them Oh, thanks.
So thank you. You asked many very, very good questions, and we have very detailed information and criteria for acceptance on the website. And I also in the chat box, I included a number of items. Feel free to email any of us, and we have a very detailed set of criteria that we can share with you. In terms of language proficiency and in terms of the criteria overall, we take the selection of the doctoral students very, very seriously. So for example, we interview all the finalists and we speak with them. So based on your statements right now, your language proficiency is more than enough to be in the doctoral program. So you shouldn't be worrying about that.
Thank you for
And
that, Prof. Thanks.
so we do interview. We're not looking at paper people. We're looking at real people. So it is very important for us to actually talk to the finalists and make sure they are a good fit for the program. So please email any of us. We will give you much more detailed information on all of the criteria. We'll be happy to do that.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Just to chime in on that very quick. So there are some requirements I'm aware of, but again, I can't answer on the fly. The doctoral program office can help. If you email a specific question like your particular language requirement, we can figure that out for you. And as you've seen, we usually respond pretty quick because we're interested in sharing the information about our program. Just one other point, you said that when you looked at and I think Herman and myself, we both posted the link again for the faculty, and you can also look at the two departments' websites to look through all the faculty members and their research interests. If you don't have any overlap whatsoever, that's more like a fit question. Is this really a department or a faculty or a school you're interested in if they don't do research in any areas you might be interested in? I think that's a bigger question you want to answer yourself, right? There should be some overlap is my experience. We don't tell you what to do, but as Herman mentioned in his reply, it's a good suggestion when you apply to look through people's research and figure out a few people who you are close to, you have some overlap with. That's a crucial element of starting the program or applying to the program, I think. Does that make sense?
Sorry, Dr. Professor George. I mean, my question actually is not about you tailoring your research interest outside the context of your supervisor. What I meant was that as I have published some research articles, and mostly I think they are in employee performance, stuff like that. And looking at the new research interests being shown to us tonight, I could see that none of them are actually in tandem or in relation to what I have published earlier. So my question is, the one I've published earlier, are they relevant to my application? Knowing fully well that they are not actually in line with the recent research interest of the supervisors or the research leads.
No, I don't think that makes any difference. What you did in the past, you can of course mention that if there is overlap or you show that you've worked on research topics before, like Margaret mentioned in the beginning, she's worked on topics, right? She may or may not have pursued those when she worked as a teaching assistant or research assistant. So that's perfectly fine. As long as you find somebody you have overlap with, somebody's work you're interested in, you see yourself in that area, that is what we're interested in. That you identify as somebody who might be your mentor when you come to us. There's students that can switch when they're exposed to different professors. There's no problem at that. It's just important that you identify a few people among our faculty who might be the ones you are close to in terms of your research interests, no matter what you did in the past. I don't think that we will hold that against you. Does that help?
I'll jump in with just a couple more things that I think are important. Number one, let's just be clear, the slide that we shared today is just a fraction of the very specific research questions that we're working on collectively as a faculty. That's why we do encourage you to go to the website where you'll get a much broader view of the breadth of what faculty in the departments are working on. Please don't be guided by just what you saw on the slide. And the other thing I would say with regard to past research, even if it isn't necessarily in those areas, is that remember, another thing that we're looking for is evidence of knowledge of the research process. And to the extent that, you know, you've worked on something that might not be in the domain, but shows that you've you're familiar with, writing academic articles or the research process in general, I think that's very relevant as evidence of that. And I would certainly speak to it in your letter of intent.
All right, thank you, Prof. Sharon.
And just one quick thing, it's not just about the program and the people in the program, but about the city. Living in Washington, D.C. is a wonderful thing. And you have many opportunities to collect data and meet people. So the location of the university is also something to take into account.
Great, thank you. Yeah, thank you for those questions. I think those are also relevant to everyone here.
Sorry, Professor.
Yeah.
Sorry, Prof. Yeah, I think I have one question left unanswered, and that's about any platform for mentorship.
Is there a platform for mentorship?
Yeah.
In the program, I mean, that is the absolute model of doing the PhD is that you will be connected. I mean, you may work with a couple of faculty, but you absolutely are going to be connected to 1 to 2 faculty. Typically, your advisor and co-advisor, and you work hand in hand with them. And as Herman says, we aim to get you started quite quickly in the process to get you. So mentorship is a significant part of the PhD program. So I'm just seeing what time it is though. And so I do want to kind of respect everyone's time and say thank you so much for coming. This is really just a beginning of conversations that we can have about this. And I think we as the faculty here tonight and those that are not with us are willing to and want to answer any questions that you have. So please feel free to get in touch with us. What your next steps are as what's been put into the chat is to look at these other documents and areas online where you can get more information about the doctoral program, get started on the application that's due in mid-January. Reach out to us if you have other questions. You can also talk to our doctoral students here. And I, Margaret Ormiston, am the PhD program coordinator for the Department of Management. So please feel free to email me with specific questions. And Dr. Jorge Walter is the program coordinator for the Department of Strategic Management. So feel free to get in touch with him for specific questions about strategic management. Thank you all so much for coming this evening, to showing your interest. We are really excited about the opportunity to welcome new students. And so please, let's keep in touch, and thank you so much, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Margaret.